What's the weirdest thing you've ever witnessed that you can't explain to this day? Standing in line at a convenience store behind a pair of EMTs, a college student and a father in his 40s with 2 kids, I witness in quick succession, the college student nod to the dad nod the kids nod to the cashier nod to the EMTs, followed by them all leaving together through a service exit. I was told to go to the next register. Me, my brother, and a friend were camping once when I was maybe 11 or 12 way out on our 100-acre farm in small town Kentucky. I woke up around 1:30 or so in the morning, and could faintly hear a piano being played that sounded like it was coming out of the woods about 100 yards from our campsite. There is not a house or building or anything anywhere near that spot on our farm, so naturally I think I'm just hearing things and decide to try to go back to sleep. Then my brother, who was apparently also awake, sits up and asks me if I hear a piano. We made a dash for the house and never camped out there again. I was in the Boy Scouts when I was younger. The summer of '97 we were on our way back from a camp out. Our modest troop was in a 15-passenger van with a U-Haul tow behind trailer. I was in the middle seat sitting up on my knees talking to the person sitting behind me, my cousin, when all of a sudden he just fell asleep as well as the 2 kids sitting next to him. I looked down at the kid sitting next to me, and he was also asleep. Then the van was upside down and I was thrown to the ceiling. It was right side up again and I was slammed back into the seat, and lastly it was upside down again, and this time it hit hard. I had glass in my mouth and felt like every bone in my body was broken. But I sat up after a minute and watched someone crawl out through the window, so I followed them. When I got out I was in ankle-deep water. We had landed in a ditch at the base of a hill that the road was on. I couldn't see the person I had followed out of the wreckage. I climbed the hill, losing my shoe in the process, and stood in 70 miles per hour traffic, and 2 cars slammed on their brakes to avoid me. A woman stepped out of the first car and was screaming her head off at me before she realized I was all tore up and there was a van in the ditch. Then she immediately ran back to her car and pulled out a car phone. Later at the hospital numerous doctors and nurses asked me to repeat this story over and over and over again. I had to tell this story. It wasn't until later that I found out everyone else was trapped in the van with broken bones and 1 kid died. I was the only person who escaped of my own power and I didn't have a scratch on me. I still don't know who or what it was I followed out of the broken window. I was on a cruise to Mexico. My husband and I were sitting on our balcony drinking wine and enjoying the stars out of the sky. A huge ball of fire, way too big to be a shooting star, comes crashing down, landing somewhere in the distance. Out on the ocean it was pitch black save for the stars, and there was no landmark to lend perspective, so I have no idea what it was or how far away it was. The rest of the night I kept waiting for a giant wave to capsize the ship. No one else we talked to saw it. TLDR, giant ball of fire fell out of sky into ocean. I worked at my college's bowling alley for 4 years. One day, we had a Chinese student with a heavy accent come in, get shoes, and start bowling. He would react to every one of his tosses. A gutter ball up to strike number 7, complete with a little dance. Yes, he kept count of his strikes throughout the night, but seemingly paid no attention to his score for each game. For those curious, at one point he shouted, "I love bowling," and one of my co-workers fell out of his chair laughing. He stayed for hours and was apparently having the time of his life. I didn't mention, but this was also our weekly free pizza night, complete with red pin bowling, which got him even more excited. When he was done, he returned his shoes, collected his student ID, declared, "I'll be back tomorrow," excitedly, and left. We never saw him again. Thus concludes the legend of Super Happy Bowling Guy. We don't know who he was, what happened to him, or why he never returned. When I was a kid, I lived in North Florida near a military base. I was outside playing basketball when I heard a jet plane flying over. There's nothing unusual about this, as all sorts of military traffic flies about all of the time. However, this jet, an FA-18, was chasing what looked like a Mercury capsule. This was in the early 90s. No idea what the hell that thing was following after, but I'd never seen anything like it. TLDR, fighter jet chases a UFO.